Hey YouTubers, good morning and welcome to the start of my truck weathering video that I planned on doing, I told you about. Um, let's start this off with a little bit of discussion about freight car trucks and how they weather and why they weather. So, picture you see in front of you right here is a Bettendorf plain bearing truck. This car is a Rio Grande ordinary 40-foot box car, and this is pretty much ordinary freight car trucks for the steam to diesel transition era freight cars. A couple of things I'd like to point out is the reason they call these plain bearing trucks is because this area right here, this journal box, is not a roller bearing. It's called a plain bearing. Sometimes they're called friction bearings, which is inappropriate. Sometimes they're called solid bearing trucks. They do have solid bearings in them, and they require them to be greased periodically, unlike a roller bearing that doesn't require much maintenance. In speaking of that, the oiling of the bearing on these trucks produces an effect on the face of the wheels that you can see here. Here's a good example here and some on here. These wheels kind of look more grimy on the front than they would on, say, a roller bearing truck, because as you know, the grease that is here in this journal ends up back on the face of the wheel here on centrifugal force, and rust won't stick to grease, so the faces of the wheels was hard for them to get rusty. You might see a little bit of rust on the very outer edges of the wheels, but very seldom. Usually on the backs of the wheels over here, and the axles got rust on them because that wasn't exposed to the grease there. So that's a little something to pay attention to on these trucks like this. Now, if you'll notice on this freight car, a little more modern freight car, does have roller bearing trucks on it, and you notice that these areas on the wheels here have more of a rusty, flat brown kind of color, and some pictures actually have a bright orange rust, almost the orange of this car, and that's due to the fact that those roller bearings are sealed and they don't get grease on the faces of the wheels there. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind when you weather your trucks. What we're going to be focusing on first are the side frames, and obviously the side frames of our plastic models don't have that appearance. They have sort of a plastic shine to them, and I'm going to show you how I replicate the dingy appearance of the black metal on there. So let's get busy. We'll start weathering up some truck side frames. Okay, the first method that I use to weather up truck side frames is some of this Model Master flat grimy black. That's usually my go-to when I'm painting them. This is how the trucks look straight from the box, pretty glossy, shiny. That's not what you want. What you want is a little more grimy color like this. This is a good place to start. Just paint them all up. If you haven't already got some of these are hemostats. Got these from a tool man. I think they're about $1. They clamp on and hold little parts like this. Okay, so this is acrylic paint. Just paint it on there. Make sure you don't get any in the journal holes back there. That'll impede the wheel performance. But paint on the back. Get into the spring areas really good, and that's usually where I start. But a lot of times I just start with the bare plastic one here, and I use chalks on them. We'll talk about that next. Okay, let's talk about chalk. And here's kind of what I hold all my different colors of chalk in. We have a brown color that looks like earth. Got a dark gray, light gray, white, grimy black. They call it grimy black. It really doesn't. It's just black. And rust. Sort of an orangey rust color. And so I like to use chalk sometimes on these truck side frames. Just we can almost get it to look as good as the grimy black paint over there. And then something that I have to use to seal the chalk with is right there, Krylon matte finish. You can get that dude at Walmart. That big can is like maybe $3 or something like that. So pretty good. It'll last a long time, especially on freight car trucks. So I'm going for the middle one there. Remember I told you it was a dark gray. I'm trying to do this on camera so you can see it. Now this is the truck side frame, and normally what I do is I just grab some chalk onto this brush, and I'll talk about this brush in a minute, and then we go ahead and get that on there. Just kind of scrub it on the outside, up on the top. Well, that looks pretty good. Sometimes that actually looks better than the grimy black. I don't go around the back side where the holes are for the wheels, because I don't want any chalk getting in there. And talk about this brush here in a minute. But as you can see, we got that dude on that side done. You can see I need a little bit more on the bottom here, so we'll do that while you aren't looking off camera. And then we'll do the other side. I'll get some on there again, and away we go. Put him on there. Try and get some on the top. And mostly I'm doing the side frame here. I'm not worried about getting the bolster and all that other stuff. We can get that later. Okay, and now I'm going to take my Krylon off camera and spray this. Try not to hit it too much. You want to knock all that chalk off. And we're going to compare this to the painted grimy black one. And I don't know. I think the chalk one looks better. This is the chalk one on the left here, and this is the painted one on the right. So depends on your point of view, what you like. So you can use both. One of the nice things about weathering, and I'll stress that to you, is don't weather everything the same way. If you want to use one truck like this that's painted and one truck like this that's weathered on the same car with chalks, do it, because that's just going to make a variety of things. So let me talk about this brush here. This brush is one of my secret weapons. And now if you can read the side of this, let's try here. It is a professional eyeshadow brush. That's right, it's a makeup brush. But it's the best brush I've found for working with chalks. And I have several of these. I even have a little teeny tiny one that I use for N scale, which we might end up showing you that too a little bit later. So anyway, that's pretty much how I weather the steam era trucks. Don't do too much more to them. I try not to put very much rust on them. If I do, it'll be a car from, the 60s or 70s, usually about the time when they started losing their roof walks and stuff like that, especially on these plain bearings trucks. I might start throwing a little bit of rust on the springs and stuff, but use it very sparingly. I usually use rust more on the roller bearing type trucks, and so. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm going to do a little piece here coming up on the wheels in a few minutes here, and we'll talk about both the roller bearing faces of the wheels and the plain bearing faces of the wheels and how we deal with those. So keep watching. Hang on just a minute. Okay, let's talk about wheels and the weathering thereof. This little gizmo that I have here is a 33-inch wheel painting mask right here from Modeler's Choice, and you have to order this directly from them, modelerschoice.com. It's $6. This is one of the handiest things for painting wheels ever. Let me show you. This little dude assembles. It comes in 4 pieces and it slides together. These end pieces slide on the long pieces. A little bit of a bear to get them wheels in there, but you can do it. The thing I use it for is to paint actually the inside here and not so much the outside. I do paint the outsides every once in a while, but I more often paint the insides of the wheels, and because I have some treatments that I do on the outside of the wheels later. So and you probably wonder, what do you paint them with? Well, my favorite paint of choice is Rust-Oleum Flat Earth Brown Camouflage. You can get this at Walmart, a couple of bucks. For me, it's the best rust brown color I've ever found. It really, you see the picture of that wheel, that's really the color that it will come out right there. And you have to do a little extra work to it, of course, but that's really the color that match it up with the cap there. It's just about the same thing. Okay, so I'm gonna pause this while I use a rubber glove, by the way. Don't get your hands all messed up. I'm gonna paint these wheels and I'll be back. Okay, we're back. I'd like to mention a couple of things. Some of the AccuRail kits have these brown plastic wheel sets, and I usually don't put them in this mask to paint them. I just go ahead and paint the outside faces of them, and some of the newer cars have these shiny metal wheels, and if you put those in this mask, I would suggest that you paint both the outside and the inside, and what that's going to leave you with is a nice shiny rim, and especially on the modern cars, that's going to look pretty cool. Going to make it look like it's been traveled. So that's how I usually would paint those. Okay, so painted the insides of these, and while I had the wheels in the mask here, I went ahead and painted the faces of some of these with some grimy black paint, that Model Master stuff you saw me using earlier, and I'm going to take those out of here, and well, looks like I'm going to take them all out of here. That's one crazy thing about this, is when this thing comes apart, it comes apart. So I'll have to separate all these out of here, but that's no big deal. Just going to try and leave some of those in there, but apparently that's not going to work. So, but anyway, you see how this kind of comes apart and into 4 sections there. So let me get these sorted out and kind of put everything back together, and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back in business. Now I'm going to put these trucks back into the wheels back into the side frames on these, so you can get an idea of what they look like. I'm not sure how much of this you can see on the camera, but they look pretty good, I think. For plain bearing trucks, huh? And they're ready to go onto a freight car. That's pretty much all I do to them. Sometimes I'll throw a little bit of rust on the back side of the wheels, but that brown color, I really like that. Kind of gives you that brown tone. And you can certainly paint the face of the wheels that same color if you'd like. I like the grimy black because I think it adds a little bit. If you think that it doesn't get that real kind of greasy, cruddy look, you can always hit it with some black chalk around the bearing locations and the wheels, and then spray it down if you want that sort of a dry, crusty look on there. So that's pretty much it that I do with the plain bearing trucks. And the next video is going to be on roller bearing trucks, so stay tuned for that one.